योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। हरि ओम।
Is the sound okay or no? Okay. Hello. Is it coming through? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So now we are coming to the close of the subsection of Chitta Parikarma. And what we've been seeing are multiple alternatives for the Parikarma of the Chitta, which means the cleansing, the purifying, the polishing, the readying of the Chitta. So it started with Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha and so on. And then we've been looking at different ways. Prachardana, Vidaranabhyam va pranasya, Vishoka va Jyotishmati. And there are sort of it is coming from various different angles established in various different principles. So it is sort of a multi-directional approach, each being suitable possibly for different people at different times. Okay?
And even one person at different times.
So last time we looked at 1.38, which was Swapna Nidra Jnana Lambanam Va. And we saw what it means, Swapna Jnanam and Nidra Jnanam. And we also saw the special place of Swapna and Nidra, in addition to, of course, the normal wakeful Jagrata Avastha, the wakeful state. So today we start with 1.39. And the sutra is Yathabhimata Dhyanat Va. Once again, you will notice the term Va, which says this is another alternative. Right? So Va is like or, this or that or this or that. So what is the approach prescribed here? So the terms are Yatha Abhimata Dhyanat. So Yatha Abhimata means as per whatever is agreeable or whatever is pleasing, whatever you want in some sense. So the dhyana with the support of whatever seems agreeable or suitable to the yogi, that by itself is also a way to attain the parikarma of the chitta. Now the term dhyana is mentioned, and as we know in the Ashtanga yoga, dhyana is one of the components. But here, if you remember, the first chapter is for the Uttamadhikari. So he is a highly qualified yogi, and therefore he is very familiar with all these things. So dhyana is sort of second nature at this stage. And dhyana is a steady flow of a certain support, alambanam, idea, imprint, any of these. A steady flow of that on the chitta happening over time is dhyana. And here the suggestion is, in order to sort of cleanse, purify the chitta, you take whatever support seems agreeable, seems workable at the time, and use that for the dhyana. The Vyasa's commentary is just 2 short lines, so I'll just read through that. So Vyasa says, Yadeva abhimatam tadeva dhyayet. So whatever is agreeable, right? You do dhyana on that. So you use that for the dhyana. So how come, how does this work? So he says, Tatra labdha sthitikam anyatrapi sthitipadam labhata iti. So with that, by choosing whatever is agreeable to you, if the chitta is able to attain a sthiti, which is a steady flow of the states of the chitta or the form of the chitta. If you remember the Prashanta Vahita sthitihi, so there is a steady flow of a single idea, single imprint in the chitta. If you are able to attain that in some topic or the other, the idea is the chitta has now learned. So there is some sort of, in the normal parlance, we could say some sort of skill development, in the sense that now that it has attained sthiti in one place, elsewhere also it will be able to more easily attain the sthiti. Right? So this is sort of a preparatory, or as we saw, parikarma is not necessarily a very deep acting thing. It is more of a superficial treatment, but for a uttamadhikari, for somebody who is very highly qualified. So here the idea is the chitta has to come to a state of sthiti. In the last of the parikarmas, it says it doesn't matter wherever, whatever is agreeable to the yogi, but once it attains the sthiti and is able to attain the sthiti there, anyatrapi, elsewhere also, sthitipadam labhata iti, it will attain a sthiti elsewhere also. So that is the idea behind this. So the elaborations, the Vivaranakara will say, chitta sthitehe prakrutatvat. So the motive, the purpose here is the sthiti of the chitta. Okay, and that is why it is said, okay, whatever the support, yatha abhimata. Natu sukhadyapekshaya. So the purpose is not to attain normal pleasure, right? Worldly pleasure, because you are doing dhyana on something that you like. But the purpose is not the pleasure attained through it. Natu sukhadyapekshaya. So that is not to be kept as the goal or the purpose or the motive, but chitta sthitehe prakrutatvad. So to sort of take the chitta to a position of sthiti, right? Something agreeable is more easily accepted, and the chitta will sort of attain the laya or absorption and so on. And therefore, this is one of the stages in the parikarma to then go to the sort of the higher or different alambanam, the other supports, which we'll look at in the next sutra when we discuss that.
So the measure mentioned here is abhimata dhyana. Abhimata is according to one's predisposition. One can take support of that and steady the mind. Once the mind is steady for any thought process. If the mind is steady, basically, it is steady for any thought process. If the mind is unsteady, then the mind is unsteady for any thought process. Therefore, the mind must be steadied first. Now, here the word is dhyana. Now, usually, dhyana means we all immediately think this is the seventh limb of yoga. And most of us think that I am not qualified. Then how can the means measured here can be something where one is not qualified? I cannot say this is the means for you and where you are not qualified. They will say, don't tell me about that means. Tell me the means where I am qualified. So we have one meaning of dhyana, means dhyana which comes in sanyama, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, the penultimate limb of yoga, and none of us are qualified for penultimate limb of yoga. Now why this means? So dhyana is a wider concept. The basic problem has come here because we have anglicized everything. Dhyana means meditation for us. So you as students first get to know the meditation is not being mentioned here. This is not meditation. Dhyana is dhyana, and it must be, the term must be retained. It's a technical term here. It's a technical term. And therefore, since we are all will be looking into English text for understanding any subject, even Oriental subject, the translation you get is meditation. Now meditation is not everybody's cup of tea. It is a higher faculty function. Perhaps all of us have a complaint that I don't have very good concentration. Is that right? Usually we have this complaint that I don't have very good concentration. Whatever we have, we think it is insufficient, and that is not concentration. And then meditation is a higher faculty function. Concentration is something which comes before, and then comes meditation. So in higher faculty function, pensivity, reflectivity, and meditativity. These are higher faculty functions according to neurology. Pensivity, quietness of the mind; reflectivity, reflectability of the mind is able to reflect. So somewhere understand difference between thought process and reflection. All thought process are not reflections. Reflections are more profound thought processes, where you don't have doubts, apprehensions, maybe this, maybe that. So this kind of basis of doubt is not there for one to be meditative. You are convinced about something, you have clear knowledge about something, crystallized knowledge of something, and then you can have meditativity. Without crystallized condition in any realm, you can't have meditativity. So it's a brain function, it's a higher brain function. Dhyana is not to do something exclusively with the brain function. Dhyana is a wider concept. I repeat that. What is then dhyana? So we'll have to consider certain definitions, functional definitions for us, to conceive what is dhyana. Dhyana it has several meanings. Just memory. Is there anyone who says, I have absolute no memory, zero memory? It's not possible. It's not possible that anyone here has zero memory. We have memory, but maybe poor or not so poor, or rich or not so rich, etc. Good memory or not so good memory, but nobody is bereft of memory. So we all have memory. Memory is material of dhyana also, which all of us have to more or less extent. So one of the meanings here in the tradition is Nama Smarana. Nama Smaranam. It is to remember the name of divinity. It is to remember the name of divinity. And just remembering the name of divinity itself is dhyana. That is dhyana. Because divinity is a principle we have considered while dealing with the Ishwara, topic of Ishwara. It's a transcendent principle, metaphysically the supreme principle. And then memory pertaining to divinity itself is dhyana. Any memory which lifts your mind sufficiently significantly is dhyana. Suppose your mind is very low, depleted condition, worry, anxiety, tension, disturbance, turbulence, unsteady mind, with which we are very, very uncomfortable. When the mind is turbulent, we are uncomfortable. We can never be saying that I have a lot of turbulence in the mind, but I am very comfortable. It's not possible. Even as an exception. So something that lifts such a troubled mind, vexed mind, tormented mind, something that lifts up. It could be just a thought. It could be just a thought, or it could be any perception and sensation. Like sometimes say Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha are 5 forms. Sometimes somebody's words can lift you from the mire of turbulence in the mind. So somebody's, You hear somebody's thought, which lifts your mind, elates your mind, and gives you a comfort, brings you in comfort zone. From uncomfortable zone, it brings you to comfort zone. Even that just hearing and relevant thought process is also dhyana. Sometimes some forms, beautiful flower, beautiful scenery, beautiful landscape, any kind of beauty. If it lifts us from the turbulent and vexed condition of the mind, that also is dhyana, because it has lifted the mind from a very turbulent state or substacy. It's called substacy, below normal. Mind from below normal has come to normal because of scenery, a beautiful rainbow, beautiful sky, beautiful scenery, beautiful landscape, a flower, or any beauty form which appeals to our mind, which lifts our mind, is also called dhyana. Because in such perception there is a thought process. It's not merely perception. It changes your thought. You have vexed thought. Immediately you see a beautiful scenery. It's not only that you have perception of the scenery. Himalayas, Himalayan beauty, mountain ranges, beautiful mountain ranges. It's not just sighting. It also changes your mind and the thought. And that's why your state of mind comes up to a stasy, to a normal state. That is also dhyana. Somebody speaks a gospel. Somebody speaking words of wisdom. You hear the words of wisdom, and your thought process changes, thought structure changes, thought form changes. It's not just hearing. These are not tape recorders. The tape recorder will never get elated. Sound machine will never get elated by beautiful sound. Nothing happens to it, but something happens to us. So these are not tape recorders. These are not sound recorders. Our mind, state of mind changes because our thought changes. So Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. These 5 objects can be sublime, and when they are sublime, they change your state. And they change your thought. Get to know this. You can't have just change of state of mind without the thought structure, thought form changing. And let me also tell you here, there are sometimes the thought can, your state of mind can change without relevance to thought. State of mind can change without relevance to thought. Those are called psychedelic drugs. Those are psychedelic drugs. But there are psychedelic experiences which works on the mind, which works on the thought form and thought process. So that is also dhyana. Somebody giving you wisdom, as I said, which lifts you from the mundane plane. Now why the mind is disturbed? Why the mind is vexed? Why the mind is turbulent? Because it is deeply stuck in mundane matters. चिखलामध्ये आपण आपला पाय रुततो. So mundane Maya is like mire, चिखल. आणि त्या चिखलामध्ये आपण रुतलो की मनाचं जे काय होतं त्याची कल्पना आहे. You can imagine. So when the mind is deeply rooted, stuck in mundane mire, then the mind is disturbed. So somebody's thought, somebody's words, somebody's counseling can help you. Now, although when you are hearing that person, you think there is no dhyan, there is no meditation there. You don't have meditation there. You are hearing someone, but there is dhyana. It is dhyana. So not to confuse with the English term and the technical term here, dhyana. It is very important for we students of yoga. Otherwise we confuse. We think meditation is dhyana, dhyana is meditation. Where is the meditation? You don't require any ability there. You can cite sublime scenery, sublime shabda, sublime sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. It doesn't require qualification. You can just get the sensory input, and that will lift your mind. The mind will be taken to a quieter plane, serene plane, comfortable plane, and even beyond. That is also dhyana. So the mind which is lifted from substasy to stasy is one dhyana. When the mind is vexed and troubled, that which lifts your mind is dhyana. Now the older generation people here will be knowing that our parents told us. Suppose you were going out and you're coming at midnight, etc., and then you had some fear, utter darkness, total black, or the cremation ground, you are passing by cremation ground. For some reason, you had a panic, fear, etc., etc. Our parents had told us, just go on uttering Ram, 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 Ram. That gave a solace. That gave a solution to some extent, and we could pass by that condition of panic, condition of extreme fear. Just the Ramanama. That Ramanama you are uttering with a disturbed mind. It's not that you are meditating, closing the eyes and saying, sitting quiet, and then Samam Kaya Shurogriva, Ram, 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 sitting on the pavement, sitting on the footpath. You don't do that. You walk. You keep walking and just say Ram, 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 Ram. That itself is dhyana. It's not meditation. It is not meditation. The mind is totally disturbed, agonized, turbulent. So it is not meditation but dhyana. So Ramanama, or remembering, memory of Hanuman, memory of your personal deity, just memory of the form of your personal deity could also give you solace. So that is also dhyana. It doesn't need qualification. So that is one kind of dhyana. Patanjali has referred to this in his second chapter. Dhyana heyaha stadvruttayaha. Dhyana heyaha. You can destroy disturbing states of mind, or you can set aside, mitigate, take a step against a turbulent, vexed, troubled mind by dhyana. Now, in that dhyana also, you are not really sitting straight, steady, closing the eyes and going into so-called meditation. Not necessary. Any measure that lifts you from the problem of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, or fear, panic, anxiety, worry, etc. These are all negative aspects of the mind. So which lifts you from negative aspects of the mind is dhyana according to Patanjali. So he has mentioned this in second chapter. In the first chapter he mentions, mind might be quiet. Suppose now you have this state of mind. Are you vexed? I presume no. You are not vexed. You are not turbulent. But you can apply a means to lift this mind another rung higher to next rung above stasy. Above stasy. That also will be dhyana. So when the mind is unsettled, you can do dhyana. When the mind is settled, there is another dhyana. There is another dhyana. When the mind is also well settled and even transcendent, there is dhyana. Now juxtapose meditation. Meditation won't come. Mind is vexed and troubled. No meditation will come. Mind should at least become normal. Is that right? So dhyana doesn't need qualification. There are three dhyanas. Bringing the mind substasy to stasy, number one. Stasy to above stasy, number two. When above stasy, to leap into sky, into cosmos, into universal atmosphere is the third kind of dhyana. The third kind of dhyana comes in dharana, dhyan, samadhi. The seventh limb, when the mind is already above stasy, that mind is given a dhyana, which is the final dhyana. So that's the third and final dhyana. Now, dhyana, as I've told you, that it needs no qualification. So, it is the classical or the pedantic instruction is that it tells us dhyana is not for you, but you must engage yourself in dhyana. Dhyana is not for you. However, you must take recourse to dhyana. When dhyana is not for you, what does it mean? Tell me now, do you want to be quiet, serene, sublime, sedate, pensive? Or you want your mind to be quiet, serene, sublime, sedate, pensive? You are different than mind, mind is different than you. So meditation is not really your requirement, it is requirement of the mind. Your mind, you want your mind to get meditation and you want the mind to have that state. So meditation is done by you, or by you, for yours. So when it comes to doing for you, you will consider, should I take it or should I not take it? Do I want it? Do I not want it? But when it is for yours, you have a different kind of criteria. You have different criteria when something is for yours as against something for you. When it is for you, you will decide by your thought process, should I take it, should I not take it? But many times when it comes to yours, you will have to compromise with what you want and you will have to do it. You don't want to go out, stir out of the house, but your baby says we must go out. Your child says we have to go out. What will you do? Will you say, baby, I don't want to go, so I will not come with you, you go alone? So you will keep your priority aside, your priority will slowly fade out, and you will go with your child, because it is your child, it is your baby. Many times we have to compromise what we want for our people, your loving people, your loved ones, your related ones. So we'll have to do something for yours even if you don't want it. You will have to do for your child, your baby, your wife, your husband, your friend, even if you don't want it. And we do it willingly. Another example I will give you. How many of you treat castor oil as delicacy? How many of you treat castor oil as delicacy? If it comes, whether you should take or not, you will say, I will not take it. Because nobody likes. Even your mind doesn't like. Your tongue doesn't like. Your gustatory organ doesn't like. Gustatory system doesn't like. Mind doesn't like. Your intelligence doesn't like. Anything, nothing likes. But yet you take it. Why? Your colons want it. Not that colons like it. Colons, they don't express liking. They don't say, I like castor oil, please give me castor oil. They want it. They need it. They don't like it. Yet we do it. Medicines. If you are taking medicine for your liver, stomach, colon, heart, lung, does the heart say, I like this medicine, give me more and more of it? It neither likes it. Maybe neither wants it. It needs it. Don't you give? Don't you swallow bitter medicine? Who likes it? Nothing likes it. Something needs it. So when it comes to dhyana, whether you like it, whether you are disposed for it or not, whether your mind likes or not, whether your psyche likes or not, whether your consciousness likes or not, it must be done, because something in you needs. Something in you needs that. That is why dhyana comes in nitya karma, in the culture. Whether you want it, whether you like it, whether you need it, not to be considered there. Something in you needs it. So even if you are uncomfortable, you must do it. Now in modern yoga, meditation should never give you discomfort. It must be comfortable, palatable. Is that right? Will you like to take meditation which is unpalatable for you? Will you do it? You will not do it. So meditation is such a thing. Dhyana is not such a thing. Even if you don't like it, and even if you are more uncomfortable with it, yet it must be done. Because it takes into account the whole our embodiment. Our embodiment has Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Sharira. I think at some point in time we dealt with it. Just as the colon needs it, nothing likes castor oil in you, colon needs it, you give it. Similarly, there is aspect within us which needs dhyana. Therefore, dhyana has been kept more open kind of concept. Ramanama, Rama Smarana, just memory of Rama, or just Ramanama, uttering Ramanama, whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you can utter it or you cannot utter. You know the story of Valmiki, he could not utter. Narada gave him Rama mantra, he could not utter. So he said, okay, no problem, say Mara, 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 he could utter it. Mara, 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 he could utter it. So he said, okay, no problem, go on uttering that you can utter. So he kept on doing Mara, 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 it became Rama, Rama. He could not say Rama, but he could say Mara. Actually, this is all case of ours also. Most of the words we can't utter reverse. Fantastic. Quickly utter the other way, phonetically. But there might be a Chinese or Japanese who might be having the word like that, fantastic phonetically from other side. They will be able to utter that word but not fantastic. Is that not possible? Have you heard any Chinese language, foreign language, Japanese language? So there are certain words. You will not be able to utter Chinese words. And the Chinese will not be able to your words. So just uttering is dhyana. Japor dhyanam, another definition, japa. Now many of you, when you take up to japa, you know you are not comfortable. And then fretting and fuming, you just revoke it. Is that right? Japala basla. When you sit for japa, the fact of the matter, many times you are more disturbed than your normal state of mind. All of you have experienced it or try to take an experience here. Now your mind is all well settled. Now if I give you japa and start uttering japa, your mind will be disturbed. Is that right? When you sit for japa, your mind is more disturbed than otherwise. Our mind becomes monkey mind when you take recourse to japa than our human mind now. Yet it should be done. By why? Something in you, a part of Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira, it needs it. You must do it. Try to put up as long as you can. If you can't put up, okay, then revoke it. But don't have condition, I won't do it. Japa comes in Nitya Karma. So it is not suggested go on doing japa even if the mind is disturbed and it's becoming haywire, it's going turbulent, volcanic. Don't do until that extent. Don't do until it becomes a volcano. But certainly it should be done to some extent as long as you can put up with it, bear with it. So I can pinch you to an extent I can pinch you. But if I go further and further and further, you will not tolerate it. We cannot tolerate somebody should not pinch you. But nobody likes this being done. He doesn't like this being done. Anybody doesn't like that being done. But there is a limit where he can put up, tolerate it. But beyond the limit, he won't tolerate it. So when you cannot tolerate it, then you may not do it. This is the traditional kind of instruction about japa. And the mind is becoming a problematic mind, then revoke it. Until that time, find out how far you can do it. Then maybe second round, third round, you can be doing it. Japa should be done. It is a must. It is a must because something requires in you. We have body of 100 trillion plus cells. Do you know all what the 100 trillion plus cells want? We have not identified them. We have not even identified 1 million. But there are 100 trillion plus cells in the body also. So we do not know what all they require. We do whatever is good for our peripheral cells. We don't consider the deeper cells. Similarly, in our embodiment, there are so many planes. So, dhyana, japa as a dhyana as japa comes as nitya karma. For 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. Why? If you can't do it, still there is a relaxation of the condition. Devachiye dwari uva kshana bhari. Just for a moment, at least listen to the name of the God. So concessions are given because it must be done. When something must be done, it must be very flexible system. It cannot be rigid system and we can say everyone must do it. At least once in a while have a transcendent thought process, transmundane thought process. Why do you want to be every time having a thought process in mundanity, 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 mundanity? Sometimes have a thought process above it. So those who can be in the realm of the thought are suggested that. If one is not in the realm of thought, at least take the name of the God. If you can't not name of the God, at least memory. Remember God. So many concessions are given because it must be done for the embodiment. Something in you needs it badly. Japor dhyanam. Another definition. Japa is dhyana. You may not be meditatively doing it. Perhaps you might be doing in a substassive mind than you have now. All of you have quite a composed mind, but if I tell you go on doing japa for 15-20 minutes or half an hour, your mind will come down to great depth. It will be substassive. Yet it is dhyana. Why? It is japa. During the Japa Sutra, we considered the japa, jakaro, pakaro, etc. What is ja, what is pa. Now japa is everything for something in you. Your gross body does so many things. It wants rest, it wants exercise, it wants food, it wants nourishment, it wants recreation, it wants medicine. So just try to understand what your gross embodiment needs. Make a requisition what all you need for your gross embodiment. From sleep to exercise, work to food, nutrition, recreation, enjoyment, even frolicking. At least once in a while you must frolic. Or once in 15 days, once in a month. All these are necessary for a gross body. Is that right? There is something about the subtle body which needs all those things. It wants to go to sleep, it wants to go for a bath, it wants to go for a toilet. Are you arranging for any toilet for your subtle body? Do you have any recipe for subtle body? Do you have any nutrition for that subtle body? Do you have any scheme for exercising subtle body? any scheme to rest it, any scheme to give it medicine, because that also can get unwell. Just as the cross body mind get unwell, that also gets unwell. Where is the medicine for it? It wants to go for gym. Where is the gym for it? It wants to go to exercise. Where is the exercising club for it? All those things are not available. They are unavailable. We don't think of them. We don't have to think of them. Adhyatma gives just one scheme. Do that. If it wants bath, it will take bath. If it wants to rest, it will take rest. If it wants exercise, it will get exercise. If it wants medicine, it will get medicine. If it wants recreation, it will get recreation. What is it? Japa. Japa Rahasya. Look into the discourses on yoga, Japa Yoga chapter. Japa gives everything that the subtle body needs. Its essentials, its needs, its comforts, its luxuries, whatever it needs, just as gross needs everything. You want the essentials, you want comforts, you want luxuries. We do everything to get all those things. The Sukshma Sharira also needs all those things, but the facility here is that it comes by only one means. Do only one thing. It will have gone to toilet. If it wanted to go to toilet, it will have gone to toilet. If it wanted to be at the dining table, it would be at dining table, it will be served. If it is wanting a dressing table, it will be taken to dressing table, it will be dressed. If it wants exercising, it will taken to gym, it will exercise. If it wants to play, it will be taken to playground or clubhouse, it will be playing there. Just one thing does everything. That is the scheme. That's dhyana, japor dhyanam. So, I have eaten up so much of your time to just impress one thing. Don't ever call this meditation. Don't ever call dhyana as meditation. Dhyana is a wider concept. Understand dhyana as dhyana. Because in modern world we'll be confusing with it between meditation and dhyana. So we can explore a lot about what dhyana is. But basic thing, noble thought which lifts your mind, noble sensory stimulation which elates your mind, thought process, autogenic self-generated thought process, self-counseling which lifts your mind, somebody counseling, giving counseling to you which lifts the mind is dhyana, gospel, dhyana, nama, smruti, dhyana, japa, dhyana. So there are so many facets of dhyana. Let us maintain the word dhyana as dhyana and not venture to translate into English or any language. Because it's such a pervasive concept that no term in any other language, current terms, existing terms, can really circumscribe the whole purport. So, abhimata dhyana. The yogi is already in a cosmic mind. He is already in cosmic mind. So he will apply, there are certain means which come as dhyana for him. You see, for Gnaneshwar, just the Guru Smarana, just remembering his Guru, was a great endowment, great bounty. Immediately his mind would scale Himalayan heights in consciousness. Just the Smaranam of Nivruttinath, his Guru. He did not even take the name. Just Guru Smaranam was a, what you call, touchstone kind of thing for his consciousness. So if you look at, try to understand his life, he has often taken recourse to Guru Smaranam, and that made him really Gnaneshwar. His potentials would be actualized by just Guru Smaranam. He did not even take name. Although he was great Varkari, the lead person in Varkari, the cult, in his Gnaneshwari, nowhere you get Panduranga Vithala. In his Gnaneshwari, nowhere. 9,000 verses. Nowhere Vithala. Nowhere Panduranga. Yet he was the greatest Varkari. But Guru Smaranam comes. It comes more often in 6th chapter. Wherever he brings the Ashtanga Yoga, the Dhyana and Dhyana Yoga, Nivrutti Smaranam would be there. For Tukaram, Rama Krishna Hari, he would almost be in Vaikuntha. He would get trance by just Rama Krishna Hari. So that is why for dhyana, even our religious consciousness is really very open-minded. It gives several forms to one divinity. See, in other religions who don't accept divinity in form, most of the religions don't accept any form for divinity. It is formless. Whereas here we have formless concept as well as with form concept. We have God formless as well as with form. Now this can be appealing. Tell me, how many of you can fall in love? Abhimata Dhyana. How many of you will like something that is formless, no form? If the divinity is considered formless, the problem comes up that we will be only fearful about the God. See, it's an omnipresent entity. The divinity is everywhere. That is not going to evoke love for him, but fear for him. Imagine if you have a state that you can't miss Prashant everywhere. Everywhere you find Prashant, it will be fear for you. Is that right? Anything that you do, anywhere that you are, suppose I am present there, it's a fear for you. Now this omnipresent divinity, having no form, no appealing quality, basically there is no form. If there is no form, there is no appealing quality. You can be only dreaded of divinity. You will only be afraid of divinity. You will not love divinity. So all the other religions are generating fearfulness. Fear God, they say. You must fear God. How can you love the God who is formless? Cannot be seen, cannot be touched, cannot be felt, cannot be imagined. How will you fall in love with something which you cannot even imagine, which you cannot even see, perceive, sense, conceive, crystallize? How will you fall in love with it? So since divinity should be loved, the concept of divinity with form, saguna, nirguna, vyakta, vyakta, these concepts have come in our religious consciousness. So it will be relishing to remember a divinity with beautiful form. So divinity comes in beautiful form, and beauty can be different concept for each other, various people. What I love, you won't love. What you love, I don't love. What you and me love, the ant doesn't love, the elephant doesn't love. So God comes in so many countless forms. The elephant will love, the ant will love, the mosquito will love, you and me will love, everyone can love. He comes in countless forms. And that is necessary for religious consciousness. Or the metaphysical concept that God has no form, no shape, but omnipresent and omniscient also. So suppose you get a condition, Prashant is everywhere and Prashant knows everything of you, I will be a problem for you. Is that right? You won't embrace me. Divinity being omnipresent and omniscient, to make it appealing, several forms, countless forms, Ananta Rupa, Ananta Nama, even just one form is not sufficient for appeal. A mother has one baby. It has one form. Just the form is not sufficient for mother to be loving, because suppose the baby is not at sight. She is 10 miles away, 1,000 miles away, 10,000 miles away from the baby. She will take recourse to name of the baby. And then there is no just one name. She gives several names to one baby. She calls, that is, address the baby by several names. You might give one name to your child, but you address your baby by different names. So the divinity, because different states of mind, you will like to have different name for the baby. When you are angry, when the mother is angry, how does it address the baby? How does she address the baby? When the mother is in a romantic mood, how does she address the baby? When the mother is in a loving mood, how does she address the baby? When the baby is troublesome, how does she address the baby? So mother will have different moods, she addresses the baby differently. The baby is in different conditions, the mother will address the baby differently. There are countless names for one baby, all the one name is given. So the God also is several forms, whichever appeals you, wherever. Krishna has one form. Is it true? No, several forms. One form has several names. Why? Because you will like to address the God by different names. For vernacular people, I'll tell you, तुम्हाला तुमच्या मुलावर अत्यंत राग आलाय, चिडलेलात, तर सोन्या म्हणाल का त्याला? You will not call him Sonia. But when the child is in a conducive condition and then you can be fondling, cajoling the child, how do you call him? कार्ट्या. कार्ट्या म्हणाल त्याला? केव्हा कार्ट्या म्हणाल? When will you say कार्ट्या? When will you say Sonia? You must have all the names available there for various moods of you, various condition of the baby. Your conditions and baby's condition, your state of mind and baby's condition of mind. The mother calls the baby addresses baby by several names. So divinity is given several names. Whichever is Abhimata, use it. So Abhimata has a wide purport. Various forms. Krishna in one form is not tolerated. Therefore Gopal Krishna, Bala Krishna, Purushottam Krishna. So somebody will like Purushottam Krishna, somebody will like Krishna in the form of giving discourse of Bhagavad Gita, and somebody will like Murlidhara, somebody will like Govardhan Krishna, Madhusudana Krishna. So many names are there. So try to understand Yashoda, and in how many names she must have called Krishna. When Krishna was naughty, Krishna showing different moods. For every mood there was different nomenclature to Krishna. And that is so important, that's what our mind likes to have. We can't have a robotic kind of language, robotic kind of delivery of speech. So in different trajectories of speech, etc. So something has to reach your heart, I will have to have particular intonation. For something to reach your brain, I will have to have different intonation. For your heart, one kind of intonation, language, vocabulary, etc., semantics. Another kind of same of vocabulary, semantics for it to reach the brain. So the concept of dhyana is so open. From mind absolutely vexed and tormented to absolutely cosmic. There must be different kinds of supports for dhyana. So this sutra has enormous purport. I don't want to unleash much more than this at this point in time on to you. Already your brain is overstuffed. But it's enormous concept, dhyana. Then abhimata dhyana. So religious consciousness must touch the purport of the sutra. Some of the commentators have expressly said abhimata dhyanam, personal TAT. Dhyana on personal TAT. So we have personal deity, we have deities, we have so many kinds of deities. On Ram Navami we will be chanting something about the Rama, we will be thinking on Rama, we would like to, we will appeal for Rama's form, not Narsimha's form. On Narsimha Jayanti we will appeal for Narsimha's form and not Krishna's form. So he comes in different forms, he comes in different names, and that is needed for us. It is only one kind of form. It is like a robotic kind of oral vocal organ. Whatever the situation, condition, communication, one the same intonation. Try to imagine how the robotic will, a robo will say, I love you and I hate you. One and the same intonation. Does it appeal you? So we must select different words. Depending upon how much I hate you, I will have to select different words, different intonations. If I hate little bit, I will say in particular voice culture. If I hate you a lot, different intonation, or perhaps a different description, different word. So also about the love. If I love you just nominally, how will I say? What's the intonation? What's the word I select? If I love you a lot, how will I select the word? What will the intonation? So in Abhimata Dhyana, you are also going to use your vacha, because if you are doing nama or nama smarana, mind, or brain, buddhi, if you are going to have a thought process, so understand how all this is circumscribed. It's an enormous purport I am about to explode. But I will detonate myself. Abhimata Dhyana and Dhyana, understand the concept. Okay. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, so today we'll stop here. Next time we'll see a little bit more about this sutra in the context of what Guruji has said, and also close out the section of the Chitta Parikarma, the 6 sutras on this topic. And then through let's see sort of the influence of Chitta Parikarma, then move on to Samapatti after that. Okay. So let's say the shlokas on Guruji, and then we can take a question or two. Vaijnānika shikshakatve
Vaijnānika shikshakatve
Kalākāra āsaneshu yaha
Kalākāra āsaneshu yaha
Yogābhyāse ca tattvajñas
Yogābhyāse ca tattvajñas
Tam vande sundaram gurum
Tam vande sundaram guru
Yoga vruksho lokesmin
Yoga vruksho lokesmin
Vardhito yasya preranaya
Vardhito yasya preranaya
Yogācāryāya gurave
Yogācāryāya gurave
Sundarāya namo namaha.
Sundarāya namo namaha.
So here's a question.
Finally, let me tell you, in our religious consciousness, divinity is feared as well as loved. Because it is omnipresent, and there is a formless aspect of divinity according to our religious texts. He is both vyakta, avyakta, saguna, nirguna, murta, amurta. So he is also to be feared because he is formless but everywhere. So just as any one of us would be fearing about a ghost, which is not visible, but what it does is visible for us. Therefore we have fear. So divinity is also invisible, and everywhere. So therefore he should be feared. And not only you and me fear, the scriptures say the Vayu, the air, the breeze is afraid of him, and therefore it flows. The sun is afraid of him, therefore at appointed point in time rise and set. Sun is afraid of him. Air is afraid of him. Whole nature is afraid of him because he is invisible, but doing everything. He does everything by being invisible. Now imagine if you have some entity in the house, invisible does everything. Even if it is doing everything wonderful, still you will have panic, because at any time it might do something untowardly as well. So divinity is the invisible force, no doubt about it, and does everything, omnipotent, all doership, does everything. So that's why we have these concepts which are diametrically opposite. Vyakta, Vyakta, Murta, Murta, Saguna, Nirguna. So the divinity should be feared as well and loved as well. He can be loved also. We are also fear about him because he is everywhere. He knows everything. He makes everything. He does everything. He can do everything. So our tradition accepts in both the forms that he should be feared about, but he can be loved as well. Now usually that's something of which we are very afraid. We won't love it. If we love it, it is because of fear. So again, there are two kinds of loves: loving because of fear and fearing because of love. Ponder over this. We fear because of love and we love because of fear. Ponder over two kinds of fears and two kinds of loves. Love out of fear, fear out of love. So it's a psychological kind of concept on which you can really ponder over. Anyway, any question?
Wanted to know about Dhyan and Samvedna, the sensations. So if you could just elaborate on this, because you said sensation is also Dhyana. So if you could elaborate.
Sensation is not Dhyana. The sensation that lifts your mind from uncomfortable plane to comfortable plane, which lifts your mind from mire, mundane mire. Then that sensation, it could be a beautiful form, and it's a sensation. How do you sense a beautiful form or beautiful sound? Shabda, sparsha, touch, various the 5 kinds of sensory objects. So that sensation which lifts your mind, then only it is dhyana. If that sensation can further spoil the mind also. It can give you obsession, it can make you delirious. There are certain sensory objects, say vision. Visual object can give you delirium. That is spoiling your mind. Then it won't be dhyana. But then that is lifting your mind, makes your mind more settled, more composed, takes on a higher rung. The ascendance of the mind is important. Whether the mind has ascended by visual sensation or auditory sensation, or descended. If it has descended, it won't be dhyana. Do you follow? Now if you get aroma of pav bhaji, your mind is going to go down. Delirium, infatuation, is that right? You get aroma of masala dosa now, idli sambar, you get aroma. Your mind will become crazy, your mind will go down. Now in that case it won't be dhyana. So when the mind is sublimated, then only dhyana. So any sensation which sublimates your mind is dhyana. Okay.
All right.
So you said japa sadhanam for the sukshma sharira. Could you elevate our understanding for japa sadhanam for the karana sharira?
Karana sharira doesn't need japa. Japa is required by sukshma sharira according to the Adhyatma Shastra. So whatever Sthula Sharira needs, the Sukshma Sharira needs, and the instrument, the agency is Japa. So it will be multifaceted. Everything that it will give you, from quenching the hunger and thirst to giving its comfort and excretion to exercise to nourishment, all that is needed for Sukshma Sharira is by Japa. And Karana Sharira needs Dhyana. Karana Sharir needs Dhyana. And that's why it is again open architecture. We have Dhyana for our qualification. Everyone is capable of doing Dhyana. So that Dhyana will cater Karana Sharira also, provided it is that Dhyana in the sense the mind engaged in a sublime form. आपण देवावर ध्यान करतो, राक्षसांवर ध्यान करत नाही. We do dhyana on divine manifestations. We don't do dhyana on non-divine, undivine, anti-divine manifestations. Then the dhyana aspect, to whatever extent it succeeds, it will be transferred to Karana Sharira account, and it will go as essential of the Karana Sharira. So therefore Japa and Dhyana will cater both, but primarily Sukshma Sharira and thereafter Karana Sharira. The remainder of it will go, the residual of it will go to Karana Sharira. If it has sufficient exercise, rest of the exercise will go to Karana Sharira. If it has sufficient nutrition, excessive of it or the residual of it, the balance of it will go to Karana Sharira. So Karana Sharira needs Dhyana and Samadhi. Now Samadhi is not in all everybody's qualifications. Yet we have states similar to Samadhi, all of us. How is it? Samadhi, Sushupti, Moksheshu, Brahmarupata. We all have state akin to Samadhi by having a dreamless sleep. So the dreamless sleep will be giving a party to Karana Sharira, will be given whatever it needs to Karana Sharira. It wants medicine, it will be given. It wants exercise, it will be given. So even if we are not doing it, that's why it is so natural. All of us will go to sleep once in 24 hours, or maybe at least 42 hours, or maybe 72 hours, but you can't be not sleeping at all. At least for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Not necessarily 8 hours of sleep. So that will be giving the Samadhi component to it, which it needs it. So that's why it is automated. Whether you can give to Karana Sharira or not, yet it will be available. So Samadhi is for Karana Sharira. If you and me don't get Samadhi, we have a state akin to Samadhi, close to Samadhi, in our dreamless sleep. So that's why it is automatically there. It doesn't starve. But to the extent that you can do it, do it. If your dhyana succeeds, if your dhyana, which call as meditation, if it succeeds, it will be going to Karana Sharira. Okay?
All right. Thank you. So we'll meet next time.